Today I'm back in the garage to install a part that I've had sitting around for a very long time, which is the 034 Motorsport's Super Duper intake system. I bought this part probably 6 months ago. It took a while, it was on back order, it finally came, and I just haven't had a chance to get around to installing it. Now, if you are not familiar with this intake system, 034 Motorsports actually makes quite a few different variations of cold air intakes for the Audi and the B9 platform. Their more expensive ones are kind of the full intake box, similar to the intake box you have already in the car. And as a result, they're more expensive because you use a lot more parts and a lot more carbon fiber to make the shroud or the housing for the intake. But this moves to a more open system, similar to the style that I would have had when I was a teenager modding my first cars. And I love this style because it creates a lot of noise, a lot of sound, especially turbo noises. I'm not going to try to convince you that it adds a ton of horsepower. 034 does a lot of testing, and I really trust their testing and what they say as far as performance gains, but I'm not really doing this for a ton of performance. I'm doing this because I want the sound and I want the look. So that's kind of my reasoning behind doing it. But the rest of the parts are fairly straightforward. This is the kind of shroud that the intake is going to go into. I'm not sure if it's going to go on this side or this side here. I haven't really put it all together yet. You just have your piping here and different couplers and things that come in the kit. So overall, not a ton of stuff. I'll read you here what comes in the kit so you know. It has the carbon fiber heat shield, it has the intake hose, it has the air filter, it has the intake coupler, which is down here. I think there's another part here as well. There's some brackets, mounting feet, bolts, nuts, and washers. So those are most of the parts that come in here. And you can see 034 makes some pretty high quality stuff. So this is really nice, high quality carbon fiber look. I'm super excited to add this to the engine bay. All right, so it should be a fairly straightforward install. I imagine it'll take me about an hour, hour and a half.
It should be a fairly straightforward install. I imagine it'll take me about an hour, hour and a half.
I know that it can be challenging on this side up against the turbo, so we'll see how that goes. And anytime you're doing anything, you think it's going to take an hour, it'll probably take me 3 hours. But let's get started. Let me quickly go over the tools you're going to need to do this job. As always, with any job, there usually some tools appear midway through that you need, but they say that you will need an M30, which I believe is somewhere down here, or it's a T30 actually, it's a Torx that you need. I have this stubby socket set that I bought. I think I bought it on either ECS Tuning or FCP Euro or something, but it came in handy for a brake job that I did on the Audi, so it's real easy to use. T30, a flathead screwdriver. This is, I think, an 8mm socket that they say you need. And then an extra socket wrench in case it comes in handy. And then I just picked these up from Harbor Freight, which are these long hex heads. You need an 8 and or a 6 and a 3, I believe. And so I would highly recommend getting these. I think when you're doing the inlet, it's really going to be much easier to get to it with this versus something else. So that's it, pretty simple. So let's get to the car and get the parts taken off. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is disconnect the hood latch clip. There's a little thing you have to depress here, and you should be able to turn it and pull it up. It should just come in. So if you actually look here, see if that will focus, you'll see this thing here. It's hard to see, but it actually goes in, and then that allows you to pull that up. We're going to take this shroud off here to get into some of the bolts that we need to. And pull back. This could use a little cleaning. Okay, there are two T25s that you have to take off here and here. I'm using this tool, the stubby socket set that I had. There's no way to get an extension in here, so this is going to work a little bit better. And that should allow you to remove this ducting. And try very carefully not to lose these screws. There's one, and here's the other. Yeah, there we go. One thing I've already done is remove the engine cover. It literally snaps into these little holes, so you just need to pull it up if you've not done it before. Very simple, should take 2 seconds. Next thing we're going to do is just going to loosen up this hose clamp here for the pipe. And there's another hose clamp here. And I don't think these have ever been removed, so probably take a little bit of coercion. All right, so this factory airbox suctions down or clips down. So it should come up just with a little bit of pulling. Okay, I can feel it coming loose here. And there we go. So we'll get the airbox out of the way. Ooh, you can hear it. Dirty in there. And then we should be able to remove this now. Okay. Saw this popped out from the bottom of the box here, so I'm going to stick this back on. So this is one of the, you can see here how it kind of guides in. One of these came off, so just put it back down. All right, so I need to unclip this. I'm just going to pry it up slowly. There we go. There's another one back here as well. There we go. Okay. So that's free here. These two clips, one here and one here. Just use a flathead to pry it up. That gives me better access to the turbo inlet pipe. Now I got to get the PCV hose here loosened off. There's two ways to do it. I can either try to wiggle it free here, or I can try to wiggle it free back here. I'm not sure which one's going to be easier, but we'll play with it and see what happens. All right, it says just to gently pull it away. So I'm going to try to do that. I don't know how gently they want here. Ooh, nope, I don't like the sound of that. I don't want to put any undue torque on this thing. Oh man, that is on there. Okay, let me take a pause so I don't break anything. All right, so I'm struggling to get this off, the PCV off, so I'm going to try to take this off without it. And it's a T30. Okay. This top one is fairly easy to get, but there is a hidden bottom one that I can probably not even show you on camera that is very, very difficult. So I'm not sure how I'm going to get down there, but we'll give it a go here. So the PCV is loose. Don't ask me how. Like, you just got to keep going at it. I got this bolt loose and I kind of tilted it this way and that way, and I don't know, man. Just be careful. That's all I can say. But it's off, so now I can get to that lower T30. So when people scream about engineers not caring about mechanics, it's this kind of crap in here that they're talking about, because I had to use these and some combination of these and this to try to break it free. It fell down a bunch of times. I had to pick it up. It was awful, absolutely awful. So good luck. I don't even know what tool you need to get in there or what they designed to do this with. So it's been literally hours of me trying to get this one bolt off. A lot of that was that my method of using a needle nose pliers to try to turn it worked for a little bit, and then quite honestly it dropped into the engine bay. And the first time I was able to get it out with the needle nose pliers. The second time I couldn't. I had to go to Harbor Freight and get one of these magnets. And so now it's literally a combination of me sticking this magnet on here, getting it in here as much as I can. I doubt you guys can even see that, but I'm gonna try. And then trying to stick it into the hole there with my fingers and the magnet, just so I can do like this much of a turn. And then rinse and repeat over and over again. I mean, this is awful. Like, this is supposed to be a quick job, but it is turning into an absolute nightmare, which is pretty typical of most things that I do on cars, it seems. I don't know if it's just me or that, as they say at Donut Media, cars are pain, but this is one of the more painful installs I've done, not because of the difficulty, but because I know it could have been so much quicker had this been engineered a little bit better. So I'm just gonna keep going with this until I can get it off, and then I'll do the PCV on the underneath side of this turbo inlet. Okay, now that we are loose, I still have to get that little PCV valve underneath here detached, so this is providing me a little bit more room. Might have to come over to this side here. Okay, let's see if these can fit in there. Let's see, are these gonna go? Might be too big. No. There we go. And it's finally off. All that to get this off. Yay. So now that they're off, you can actually compare the size of the two turbo inlet pipes. And you can just see, maybe I'll turn it this way so that way it's the same. You can see just how much larger the 034 one is at the inlet. It does taper down, of course, to match up to the turbo housing, but it is getting a lot more airflow initially in there. The other thing, I love 034 here because they allow you to just slide it over. So you can actually, this bottom bolt that was such a challenge and a chore, this one right here, on theirs, you can pretty much tighten it down until it's almost snug, and then you get to slide it down rather than having to put it in and then basically tighten it from the start. So that's one of the awesome things that they've done as well with this turbo inlet pipe. So kudos to 034 for doing that. So we'll get this hooked up next. Okay, so I have the 54 millimeter adapter here, which is for the stock turbo, which just slots into that housing, into the inlet pipe. So it goes in there. And then there is another O-ring that slots right into this circular area here. Now, they suggest putting a small amount of silicone grease or petroleum jelly. I have silicone brake parts lubricant, so I'm gonna use that. You guys can tell me in the comments if this is a terrible idea. Maybe I should be using something different, but it says silicone, so, and that's what it says on the instructions. So I'm just gonna put it here, put the O-ring in, and hopefully this will help the O-ring seat and stay seated during installation. All right, next thing is to thread in the bottom bolt. We'll see if that's good enough here. Okay, when you're threading in this bolt, you really don't have to thread it in that far because the turbo inlet is, the flange is really thick. And so if you twist it in too far, you're just gonna end up having to back it out. I've tested it now and it looks like it's fitting okay. So I'm gonna try to get the turbo inlet attached and I'm gonna try to attach this bottom PCV next. Okay, so it's secure. I've probably taken it off and put it back on 3 times. You really have to get on this underneath PCV. I had to get like 2 hands in there and squeeze it, which was really hard because it was hard for my hands to fit. And then these, I've lost one of the washers on this top one somewhere down here. Hopefully it doesn't go into any moving parts because that was annoying. But I've taken it off and put it back on. Those O-rings are really annoying, but what happens with that adapter is it actually just, there's a rubber O-ring on the outside of it, and so as you tighten it, it actually seats into the inlet, the turbo inlet. So now it's sitting flush. That bottom one is just awful, so there's no real good way to do it. I mean, it's a combination for me of this thing, magnets, and just crunching my fingers into very small spaces, but it is secure. This probably took 4 hours, to be honest with you. I mean, it's just an absolute nightmare getting it off, getting it back on, having to go to the store. You know, if you have the right tools, if you do know, like, what is the right tools to take it off that's Torx and put it back on that's hex, what's the right tool to get in there easily? Is there anything that you can do? I tried like long ones going through here. There's just no space. I'm not sure if this pipe here is different on different cars, but there's no space on the S5. So I did the best I could, and I'd like to get on to actually the fun stuff. It's actually dark now, so moving on. All right, so we need to hook back up the clips and other things, and actually put the PCV back on. So rotate it down here, click it in here, and let's see here, make sure we line it back up. Click it back in here. I didn't end up taking this one off, so that's all good. And then these clips here, one goes onto this back portion and the other one here to this portion. So just getting those back in place. So that is all good. Now we can move on to the actual fun part, which is the intake part. This was a place probably where I should be spending most of the time, but it was absolutely the worst part. All right, so we're gonna get the heat shield hooked in here, and we're gonna connect this bracket to it. And then these will also get connected and slot into the grommets that actually connected into the engine bay. So what we're gonna do is just take this 8mm nut off here, and I'm gonna thread it through this hole. Get one bracket, side of the bracket started. Okay, and we'll get started on the other one. And then you have 3mm on one side and 8mm on the other. Okay, nice and tight. So I pulled the grommets off the bottom of the airbox because I'll need them to go here into these nubs that are on the bottom of the heat shield. They'll attach over, and then that will be what allows this to hook into the car. So just slide them on. That will allow the heat shield to drop into the car. Okay, just doing a little test fit here with the shroud and everything. So I think the shroud is gonna sit down in here. This piece will slide in. There's a place for it to be screwed in here. So I think it'll sit like this. Then the coupler, I believe, will go in and it will sit like this, if I'm not mistaken, or this hose here. And then this will go into this slot and slot in. Of course, it's not fitting right now. This is going to be tucked in here because it's not all hooked in, but I think that's how it is. And I think I'm going to try to put it in. Maybe this is a bad idea, trying to put it in while it's in the car, but I think it's going to be easiest for me to visualize how everything kind of fits in. I'm going to hit the heat shield hooked in, then I'm going to hook in the hose to the inlet pipe. Okay, that snapped in pretty easy. Looks like it's sitting well there, so the air should funnel through. I don't think this is going to be used anymore. There it goes. And then this one, I think will come out as well, and we will use the one they gave us. Okay, let's try to get the hose connected to the turbo inlet pipe. Okay, not quite there yet. Okay, it's now sitting flush. Okay, that's well on. All right, so I've put the coupler in here. I've put on this clamp as well. I haven't hooked the coupler up at the bottom, but you're gonna take that bolt and nut here and bolt it in. That's looking good. I'm gonna actually I'm gonna tighten this down here first. All right, so I'm gonna try to go in here with these two, this nut and bolt, and see if I can get it connected. All right, got it. Okay, let's see if I can fit this around it here. Tight enough? Yeah, snug, not going anywhere. Awesome, we're in the home stretch. All right, so the last big bit is the filter. So I'm gonna get the filter down in here, and key here is just making sure you get it around all sides. Sometimes it can feel like it's around the bottom and it's not quite there. That looks good. And then we're gonna just tighten that down. Yep, it's all moving together, which is what you want. Cool, so I think most of this is good. I wanna get this shroud hooked in here, and then we should be good to go. Okay, to secure it into the car, it says, the instructions say to reuse the factory mounting set screws here, but do not do that because it was not working. It was getting caught, and I was afraid it was gonna crack the shield and the carbon fiber. They've included these two bolts into the kit, and I'm guessing that these are what we should be using to secure the heat shield to the vehicle. So I'm gonna try these instead and see. Yeah, these are going in a lot smoother. Yep. So do not reuse the factory screws. You will end up probably cracking it. Yeah, I can see this coming in here and getting nice and snug. So they have included new hardware, and that's nice and secure. Okay, So just make sure you also put the shroud back on and then also the latch for the hood. It just slides in here and then that just clips on. So it's been about 2 weeks since I've had the intake installed on the car, and I've absolutely been loving driving and listening to the sound of this engine. It really does change the entire dynamic of the engine from a sound perspective. If you've driven a B9 S5 or maybe you haven't, the engine doesn't really make a lot of noise, especially from inside the cabin with the windows up. You don't really hear much of anything. Even the exhaust on this car is fairly quiet, especially if you have it in comfort mode. But even if you have it in dynamic and sport, while you do definitely hear some of the pops and bangs, it's not an overly loud car. And so without the intake, really the engine is fairly muted, the exhaust is fairly muted, it doesn't really make a ton of noise. And that completely changes when you put this intake in. You can hear it breathe from inside the car with all of the windows wound up. It just really creates this beautiful whooshing sound. You can hear the turbo spool, you can hear it suck in air, you can hear it release when you let off the gas. It just is awesome, awesome, awesome from a sound perspective. And it looks great too. At least I think it does. I think the carbon fiber looks really cool, and just having the open intake on there looks so much better than an airbox with all of the baffling. So I would highly recommend it. I think it's a great price point. I think what 034 has done is really create kind of a traditional cold air intake look for a modern car and really improve the sound. The other thing I would say as well is, you know, if you read the specs, and they'll talk about it in some of their videos, is the intake is rated for supporting up to 1,000 horsepower. So when they look at, you know, the statistics they use to make sure that you're going to have enough airflow for the kind of horsepower numbers you're trying to hit, if you're looking to get up into the 1,000 horsepower range, this will support it. I have no plans or desire to get anywhere near that. At most, I might get to 500 if I do tune this car in the future. But really, I did it, one, for the look, and two, absolutely for the sound. So it is, it's really cool. I'm really enjoying driving it. If you're thinking about doing this, I would really recommend that 034 Super Duper intake. Thanks again for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave a like, subscribe, comment below. The comments are my favorite. It's always great to respond and interact with people and hear what you guys thought about the video. You know, leave a suggestion for somebody if you've done this installation before, or if you see something I could have done differently or better. Leave a comment below so it helps the next person coming and doing this. Let me know what you think about the intake, the look, the sound. Is it something you're interested in getting if you have one of these cars? All right, thanks. Bye.